the air for that long of a time. And we're going to start out this year with a bang because we have two homes. And joining me now is the owner of this house.
I don't even know what to do. I mean, you're breaking every rule here, Michael.
You're gonna tell, aren't you?
No, first I want you to tell me why. Why did you want this
I wanted to protect my mother and my brother. It's what you and Dad use to make people go away, isn't it?
And 3,000, that still would have been
Pretty,
good
you know
sum.
what, from what I understand, this home was kind of an upper end model because all of the timbers are redwood and red fir. So the exterior of the house is redwood, which helps with termites and different things like that for this location in Southern California.
I like the siding on the house, the way the wide board and the narrow board, it gives it really a nice look. I understand there used to be a hitching post out here?
There was a hitching post. Not everyone had automobiles back then. And the hitching post was actually that there were some neighborhood children that set the hitching post on fire twice. So it was kind of notorious in the neighborhood for shenanigans going on in our front yard.
So the hitching post is gone. Did you have to sell your horses?
We did. We didn't have any hay in the backyard.
Oh, can we go on in and see
Please,
your house?
yes, thank you.
Let's go. Is this door original?
The front door is original, and this screen door, we found the original screen door in the attic, and we replicated the screen door, so that is new. But the front door is original. This is...
But the etching glass is not original?
It is not original. When we bought the house, the previous owners had put in a stained glass piece that just didn't really work with the era of the home. And so my husband and I decided, instead of putting house numbers on our house and drilling more holes in it, that we'd etch the glass with our house number.
That's a neat idea.
And it gives us a little privacy while letting light in as well.
Now, the floors, are they original?
The floors are original. All of the windows in the home are original as well, as the crown molding, the baseboards, all the real detailed features of this house, as well as the fireplace, are all original. We had to work on the windows to have them double hung again so that they would be in working order.
Are they with the weights?
Yeah, they are. And they're the original weights inside, too.
Oh. And the fireplace is wood burning?
The fireplace is wood burning, and from what I understand, that was the only source of heat when this house was built.
Oh.
A wall heater was added later, a few decades later.
So you have a combination living room, dining room, basically?
Yes, yes. And the French doors go out to the backyard, and there's a little garage back there, a one-car garage, all with the same siding and double-hung windows.
So which way are we going now?
Let's head out to the kitchen.
Okay.
This house is small, so you can pretty much see everything as we go along. The kitchen is not original. We've tried to keep this kitchen kind of in line with the theme of the home. It was redone in the 60s, so there was faux linoleum flooring to look like wood floors, and dark cabinetry, and Spanish tiles. So we tried to combine modern and kind of timely pieces. The floor is cork flooring, and they have used cork flooring for years and years. And you might have found cork flooring in 1918. It's in the Library of Congress, actually.
Do you know if the appliances came with the house when it was...
I don't know. I know that when we redid the kitchen, you could see where there was the pie.
For the...
Yes, the venting.
Yeah.
And so they put their dry goods in that, and it stays very cool. So there was the hole in the floor for the venting system, and everything that's in it's in its original place.
Now, is this 2 bedrooms?
It's 2 bedroom, 1 bath. Very, very tiny. There was one minor addition to the house in the 50s, and it was maybe 10 square feet, and it's back in what we use it now as an office. with some vintage French doors that we found at a surplus yard and then refurbished them.
So the addition is just from the beam?
From the beam on back. That's all they added on,
Why
which
would they
isn't that
add
funny?
such a short,
I'm not quite sure.
and those are the vintage French doors?
They sure are. Those were from the 1920s from the Silver Lake area, a little north of Long
I want to check out something. Oh, instead of the whole door opening, it's just...
It is. It's a wonderful way to get air coming through here without having to open the entire door. That was one of the features that really sold us on these doors. The hardware is original. The door handle is new, but all the hinges and the levers on the lights are original.
You were lucky to find these.
Yeah, we really were. They were a mess. My husband did a great job with those. And
It looked like you've done a lot.
when we bought this home, it had been a rental for quite some time. The previous owners owned it for about 25 years. And when we painted the exterior and started sprucing things up, continually people would knock on the door and say, "When is the for rent sign going up?" We had to turn them away. This is one of the bedrooms with the wainscoting, double-hung
That's
windows.
all original, the wainscoting?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh.
2 closets in this house, and that's it. There isn't a linen closet or any other closets other than in the bedrooms. So
Hey, it's a kid house. What
it's
do you
a kid.
expect?
You're right. They didn't go for the real expensive version. And then if you head down the hall that way, that goes into the bathroom, the one and only.
Has this been remodeled?
It was, again, when they redid the kitchen in the 50s, this again was linoleum, yellow tile and appliances, just pretty horrific.
That's a high shower.
Well, my husband's really tall. That's a necessity. The clawfoot tub is original. Actually, it was in one of my friends. Her mom used it in the backyard for a flower pot, and we took it and had it refurbished. So that's an original cast iron tub, clawfoot tub, and the windows are double hung. There was a
Oh, you can see the ropes on the...
there was a medicine cabinet behind that mirror, but they had taken all of the hinges and the door off, so we couldn't save that, which was unfortunate. But yeah, we redid. This is all new, made to look.
You know what I
vintage.
like about it? That there are absolutely no cracks anywhere.
Right. Which, if you look at in the house here and there, like in the ceiling, you'll see a few cracks that we've had repaired, and we're going to have to. With an old home, that's one thing that you have to continue.
Tell me about it.
I know you know that, Harvey. This is the last bedroom, and again, not very large, 1 closet. We keep things pretty minimal. All the color palette in the house is all historic home colors as well. Palettes that you would find back in the early 1900s.
It's neat where they have all
The chair railing, and the big baseboards are really a nice addition as well. It really breaks up the room and gives it a little more character
I
when
have
you don't
those
have much.
too.
Do you really?
Yes.
Yeah, I think they're a
I
great
notice
addition.
you have wall plugs in yours, though.
Oh, and those apparently, the first week we bought this house, one of those wall plugs went up in flames, and it wasn't being used. So it's been a real interesting journey with this home. It wasn't in very good shape, and we've tried to kind of maintain its integrity, but those were there when we bought it.
My house was built in 1918 also.
Was it?
Can we only have a couple minutes. Can
Oh,
we
sure.
run out in the backyard real quick?
Absolutely.
And I notice that whenever I do something to my house, I have to do 2 or 3 things to make the one thing
It's the
fit in.
proverbial can of worms, don't you think?
Yes,
It is.
it
Come on
just...
out. So the backyard,
Oh, you have a nice big backyard.
well, that was one thing that we really appreciated about this property. And there's the garage, single-car garage. This concrete is the original porch. Everything else when we bought this home was pretty much weeds. So we've done quite a bit back here.
Do you
And
entertain out here a lot?
often. With this, luckily this California beautiful weather allows us to have this great living space outside, and that's really what we've turned. We've had Christmas Eve dinner out here instead of inside. It's been great.
Now, your home was on the Bluff Heights home tour, was it
It
not?
sure was, yeah. We were the little house on the tour. Everything else was big and grand, and I think having a smaller home like this on the tour really shows that anyone can buy a home and refurbish it. And it doesn't have to be a big grand home, and it can be simple, and still you can keep in with the era of when it was built.
That's a comment I got not too long ago from somebody who said, I like your show, but you always show million-dollar mansions. And I don't really, and this is a prime example. I mean, it's not cheap by any standards by today's prices, but it's not...
It's increased in value, but the one thing that holding the heritage of Long Beach and all of the history here is really important, and I think it's important to most people that live here. So if you are lucky enough to find a bungalow that needs to be refurbished, it can be done, with a little sweat equity and integrity, and that's what we've done here, and we sure enjoy living here.
You're probably like me up at Home Depot most every weekend.
They know me by name, especially in the paint department.
Lynn, thank
you,
you for
Harvey.
letting me come and see
Very
your
nice
house.
to see you. Now I want to come see your house next time.
Anytime.
Okay.
Just stop by and
I
I'll be
will.
happy to show it to you.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Nice meeting you.
And don't go away. We'll be right back with more Long Beach Treasures.
Food's great. I can see 11 TVs from where I'm sitting. Great atmosphere, good service. Excellent place to come watch a game.
Lots of good sports, great televisions.
Football, baseball, and HD down at Smooth Sports Grill.
There's actually a nightclub Friday nights and Saturday nights. Fantastic DJ. We love coming to Smooth. Great food. Got televisions everywhere. Nice place.
Well, welcome back to Long Beach Treasures. We're going to go and visit another example of a kit house, and the owner is right here next to me, Diane McNinch. Thank you for letting me come and see your house.
Oh, Harvey, it's always my pleasure. My house loves company.
What year was it built?
1906,
And the square footage?
around 2,100.
And how do you know it's a kit house?
It's kind of by word of mouth. There are 3 other houses in Long Beach like this one, and this is the only one that wasn't remodeled, by the way. We use that term in a very bad way when someone changes the floors or lowers the ceilings. And that has led me to believe that it would be a kit house because architectural drawings were not shared at the time this was built.
Do you have any idea what the cost would have been?
About $1,000, and that included plumbing, paint, the original wallpaper that you'll see, the light switches, the hardware, the lumber, the paint. I already said paint, everything.
And so when this was built, basically this was one of the prime areas in Long Beach, right? Because of Wilmore.
That's correct. This is the first residential neighborhood in Long Beach. So this house was actually built on 3 lots. This would have been a very prestigious location. The apartment building next door was built in the 30s, and a third of this lot was sold off to build that. The other third of the lot was probably used to grow vegetables and have chickens and all of that. And in the backyard, you'll actually be able to see some of the first Navy housing before Navy housing was built.
And behind the park over there is the Bembridge House, and a lot of the early mansions were over in that area.
Yes, indeed. This is the largest house on this side of the park, and Dorothy's house is the largest on the other side of the park. So it's a really great place to live, and I know that when these were built, the movers and shakers of our city lived here.
Well, let's go check it out.
All right.
As we go in, I want to comment, what a beautiful front door.
Thank you. It's original. I had the brass work polished, and I've done the best I can to keep this 100-year-old door working. Welcome, Harvey.
Oh, so you have a little entryway here.
It's lovely, isn't it?
Yes.
The coffered ceilings are all original.
Now, is this the original wallpaper you were talking about?
Yes, it is. And I know it's original because I've scrubbed under it and there's nothing under there but plaster.
This is over 100 or over 100
Yes.
years old.
Yes, it is. There's a little fading in some of the corners, but I don't mind. I love the fact
Oh, I can't believe
that it
it's
came
that
together.
old.
Isn't it wonderful?
And how did you ever did you have to strip the or the wood or
That's going on in the dining room. That's an ongoing project of taking the white paint
the
off.
coffered ceiling? Was it painted at one time?
The plaster itself was sort of a Hubbard squash color, and it really highlighted the original wood. I just haven't gotten around to getting that color back up on the ceilings.
I like the lights on all four corners.
Isn't that clever?
Are the chandeliers original?
Yes, they are, and actually they're gasoliers. There's a little key here, and there was a mantle, like a Coleman
Right.
mantle lantern. And when these were put in, they weren't sure electricity was going to be reliable and would be around for very long, but they knew gas worked. And there are gas pipes in the ceiling. So if the electricity failed, you could strike a match and still have illumination in your house.
Is the window original?
No, the window is not original. That was put in by Scott Winston, who owned the house in the 70s. He was an architect and paid very close attention to the soul of the house. And I liked what he did where he took the exact pattern from the wallpaper and had it made into the window. I think he didn't want to look at the apartment building.
And I'm assuming the built-ins are all original.
Yes, they are. What's unusual about this is that it's the entire length of the dining room. Most built-ins are about 2/3, but this goes the entire length, and it's so massive. When I first moved in, I had a small table, and it just threw the feeling of the room off. So I've been able to have this table,
Now, I was
which is
wondering,
perfect.
Do you have a large family? I can't believe the size of your table.
I like dinner parties. I like to entertain. I've had this table full more than once, and I've got another one out on the back deck where it's perfect for summertime.
This must seat, what, 14, 15 people?
It can do 14. Yeah.
Wow.
I feel very fortunate to have bought this house when it was affordable, and
How long have you lived here?
I've lived here since 1993.
So you're in the process of refinishing in the wood here in the dining room?
Yes.
Stripping the painted part of it?
Absolutely. I didn't like this wallpaper when I moved in because when it's next to the white paint, I don't think it's that pretty. But as I started taking off or having the white paint taken off, this wallpaper becomes incredibly beautiful next to the original wood.
Now where are we going?
Now we're going from the dining room into the kitchen.
Now has the kitchen been a little remodeling going on here?
A little, not much. Again, Scott Winston owned the house. This room, this wall went all the way across. The original sink was right behind me. Where the cup rack was where the door came into the kitchen. And as we go around the hallway, I'll show you the mystery door. Scott was tall, and I'm pleased because look how lovely and tall my counters are.
Oh.
And he did a great job with putting this kitchen in that looks as if it grew with the house. Shortly after I bought the house, a man from a Japanese magazine called The Art of Living with Wood, a magazine solely dedicated to bungalow houses, came. He said this is the only redo kitchen he's ever seen that looked like it grew with the house. So Scott did a great job.
And this is...
This is my library, and it was originally a downstairs bedroom and also used as a sewing room. The fireplace wasn't here originally. Scott had that put in, and he took the archway from the porch and put it here over the fireplace, and also the pass-through from the kitchen to the library. This is really one of my favorite rooms, especially on a rainy day. I can sit on this couch with a pot of tea or a bottle of wine and a straw and a book and spend the whole day just mesmerized looking out into the backyard.
Now where are we going?
Now we're going to the bathroom.
How many baths do you have?
It has two. Now what I'd like you and your cameraman to do is step in, because Scott was about 6'4". This tub is a foot below grade. So he could have a lovely shower. And the wood in this bathroom, I'm told, came from one of the churches in Long Beach. So if you're sitting in here and you feel like making a confession, it's quite natural. And what's lovely is this shower is engineered so well that it truly doesn't even need a curtain.
Oh.
Okay, now we're going to go into the other downstairs bedroom. This is a rented room, and ever since I've had the house, someone has rented this. A lady by the name of Gloria McMillan is the current resident of this room. And the pictures you see, the black and white pictures around the house, are part of a 32-piece exhibit. I took these pictures of women and children in Cambodia, Vietnam, and Thailand. And it's called Women and Children at Work. And they're very dear to me. So anyone that rents this downstairs bedroom is stuck living in an art gallery.
Now, how many bedrooms do you have?
I have 3. And we can go upstairs
All right,
and see
let's
the
do it.
others. These stairs are very narrow and cricky, so be careful.
Now, this almost seems like it's a private little area.
It is. It does seem that way, doesn't it? And I believe this was an attic that was sectioned off and became sleeping quarters later. The first bedroom we're going to go into is my room. And it's really, I love it.
I like the slanted ceiling.
I do too. As a little girl, I always wanted a canopy bed, so this is my tribute to that. And this I got in China, and that was my big extravagance. Now let's go to what's historically important about this room. This room contained beds for Navy wives without children. And at one of the open houses I had, a woman came and said, I remember looking out my bedroom window and seeing my sister hanging her laundry out on the roof next door. So I brought her up here. She looked out the window and she said, this was my room. There were 4 single ladies that would share this room, and the Navy wives with children lived next door. No children lived in this house when it was a boarding house at that time. So it's pretty exciting.
So this was military housing at one time.
Yes, it was. And so that way, you know, the big dining room really came in handy.
Your table would have come in handy.
Yes, I'm sure they had a lovely table. Additionally, she got all excited when she saw the piano. She said that's where the piano was when she lived here.
Oh.
So it's a piano wall, and generally an inside wall is the piano wall because it doesn't change temperatures.
Let's go on, because I
Alrighty.
want to go out and see the backyard
well,
real
first
quick.
you have to see the upstairs bathroom
Okay.
because you can actually see part of the backyard.
Oh.
And what a lovely view I have to brush my teeth in the morning. CSI Miami actually used this bathroom as a set to look out into the yard for some clandestine murder happening.
Let's go out and check out your backyard, because you said you have some new sculptures out there.
Yes, I do.
Let's
Thank you.
go. Well, you must love big tables.
I do, and I love having them filled with people.
Now, what's this little cottage?
This little cottage was originally a garage. If you look across the center line there, you can see where there was a door that would roll across and back. In 1946, the owners converted it to what I call the world's smallest house. It's always rented because people love to have a place without adjoining walls or without someone walking on their head. And it's downstairs is a living room, kitchen, and bathroom, and upstairs is a bedroom and den. They're all about 2 feet square.
You have a big backyard, don't you?
Actually, I share that side of the yard with Carol McCafferty, and she is the one that owns the apartments that you see that were original Navy housing. And that's how this neighborhood received some of the Navy mitigation money, because it was discovered that indeed these two properties were Navy housing before any Navy housing was established.
Boy, it does seem like fall out here with all the leaves.
I love this. It does not look like a California backyard, and most people are so amazed when they come here and they go, well, I could be in Pennsylvania or New York or Maine, and I grew up in those states. So,
I don't know if that's bougainvillea back there, but the color sure.
yeah, it is. Then that probably wouldn't be in Maine, but the trees and
the color is perfect.
Oh, isn't it lovely? Carol McCafferty and her daughter Shannon planted that for me, and it is so beautiful. They're very good neighbors.
And the lonesome cowboy?
Yeah, that's Travis. And we can go down and meet Debbie.
We've only got about less than a minute.
Okay, well, let's go down and have a little walk here. This is Willard. His girlfriend Twyla is out in the back here.
Oh, there's Debbie?
There's Debbie, yes. And we had my daughter's engagement party here in July, and we'll be having her wedding brunch this coming September. So it's rustic. It's not Virginia Country Club manicured, and I like it this way. It's friendly.
It seems like a used backyard.
Yes, it is. It likes people, and people like it. It's magical. Little children come here and they're entranced. They'll sit on this little chair or they'll crawl in the bushes with the cats.
Has your house been recently repainted?
Yes, it was repainted about 2 years ago. The deck was redone. The foundation had to be replaced, and that was a huge, huge undertaking. And as you leave, you can look at the cracks in the front porch as the building has settled from the foundation being replaced. It has various creaks and groans, and we're done, aren't we?
All right,
The
Dawn.
cameraman's saying we're done.
Diane, it's time to go. Thanks for letting me come. It's always a pleasure to see you.
It's always a pleasure to be seen.
And that's our show for this time. And by the way, Happy New Year. And we'll see you again next month as we take another walk through history and uncover more Long Beach treasures.
I always told myself I wasn't going to...
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Long Beach Treasures. I'm your host, Harvey Keller. Today we're going to be visiting the port of Long Beach, one of truly the treasures of Long Beach. And joining me is Stephen Macias. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you, Harvey, and welcome to Long Beach Treasures.
What is the mural behind us?
The mural depicts the history of the San Pedro Bay from the time our building was finished in the 1950s to the early days of Long Beach history, pre-Long Beach history, if you will. The mural reads from right to left, again depicting the Spanish and Portuguese sailors who sailed into this area in 1542. Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo was the first Westerner, if you will, into the San Pedro Bay. The mural then goes on to show Long Beach's history as a rancho and ultimately how cargo was handled in the 1950s when this building was dedicated, pre-containerization.
Now, is a port owned by the city of Long Beach?
Actually, we are a city department. Our official name is the Long Beach Harbor Department, and we operate much like any other city department with a few exceptions. We do not report directly to the city manager. Instead, we're governed by a 5-member board of harbor commissioners.
Appointed by the mayor and approved by the city council?
Exactly.
For 2 6-year terms at this time?
At this time, you're absolutely correct.
And we're going to go take a tour of the port?
Right, we're going to jump on board the Port Surveys boat, and we're going to get an inside look at Long Beach Harbor.
I'm ready. Let's go.
Let's go.
Well, here we are.
This is it, Harvey. Welcome again to the Port of Long Beach.
These cranes are just phenomenal. They're so huge. I can't imagine. I guess they're built around the world.
Yeah, our newer cranes are coming to us primarily from China these days. As a government entity, we go out to bid for cranes, and there's this manufacturer in China, ZPMC, that is truly doing remarkable things with these gantries. The ones to the right of us here are some of the newest cranes in operation at the port. Those booms extend 160 feet.
Now, when these are shipped over, are they fully built on these ships as they're coming across the ocean?
They are transported fully assembled. We did take delivery of some new gantries back at Pier A. Pier A is the former Ford plant in Long Beach. And those cranes had to travel across the Pacific semi-retracted because they were too tall to clear the Gerald Desmond Bridge in our inner harbor.
Fully erect. It must look like a Star Wars coming across the ocean.
Yeah, they are otherworldly, that's right. One of the many varied cargoes we see at Long Beach Harbor.
Now, where does the Port of Long Beach rank nationwide?
We are the second busiest container port in the United States, followed just behind the Port of Los Angeles, which continues to lead.
Weren't you number one at one time?
We were number one, I believe, in the mid-90s, 94 to the year 2000. We were number one. We lost a customer. They moved to the port just to the west of us, the Port of Los Angeles, and with their departure, LA regained the number one container title.
What about worldwide?
Worldwide, we're number 5 when combined with the Port of Los Angeles. Number 1, number 2, it doesn't really matter what we're doing for Southern California with this wealth of trade opportunities is providing jobs and cargo for the nation.
What do you think, 1 out of how many jobs would the port provide for the city of Long Beach? Do you have any
It's
idea?
1 out of 8 jobs in the city of Long Beach linked to trade, Harvey. There are some 30,000 jobs in the city. Everything from international bankers and freight forwarders, customs brokers, government workers, truck drivers. I mean, a whole myriad of opportunities.
Are you the largest employer in the city?
We're one of the largest, yeah. Trade does continue to grow, and with that growth comes an increase in economic opportunity for Long Beach.
Now, it's my understanding that you lease out these various facilities to major companies?
Exactly. We operate as a landlord port. We do not operate any of the facilities you'll see today. Instead, we long-term lease them to carriers and to terminal operators who move cargo. That's their primary interest.
So does each terminal operator provide the labor force required for their facility?
Yes, it's all waterfront labor is coordinated through the International Longshore and Warehouse Union. All 29 U.S. West Coast ports are manned, if you will, by members of the ILWU.
How many containers can one of these ships hold?
Well, hopefully we'll see one of these super ships a little later in our tour, but some of the largest vessels calling at Long Beach these days carry upwards of 8,000 20-foot equivalent units, 8,000 20-foot cargo containers per crossing.
Yeah, it doesn't even seem possible that anything that big with that much weight could even float.
Harvey, these ships are truly incredible. They're 1,100 feet in length. They're 140 feet wide. They are a new generation of container ships known as post-Panamax vessels. They are vessels too wide, too long to transit through the Panama Canal, and thus restricted to the Trans-Pacific or transatlantic trade routes.
And it's my understanding that some of these huge ships has a crew of only 12 to 15 people?
Remarkable, but yeah, they are engineering wonders. Fully automated, the captain or master of the ship assumes control, sailing into or out of the harbor. The rest of the time, barring weather and other natural incidents, they are completely automated.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, truly, truly. With any luck, we'll get you on one of those ships one day. We have some vessel activity in front of us, a rarity in the harbor, actually a rarity in this industry. Matson Lines, you may recall, used to operate passenger ships to Hawaii. Yeah, they're one of the last remaining U.S. flagged carriers. They continue to operate between the U.S. West Coast and Hawaii and Guam. But Matson, too, is taking advantage of that booming Chinese trade these days. And in the last year, they've added service from southern China to Long Beach.
Is China the largest?
China is our largest trading partner, yeah. And it's two-way trade with the People's Republic of China these days. But push a shopping cart through a discount store, and you'll see that many of our manufactured goods these days do come from the People's Republic of China. In fact, Asia dominates 90% of this port's trade.
So without China, the trade here at the port would be reduced considerably.
Yeah, I think that you're absolutely right there.
It's just remarkable, the port. Oh, here's another one of our guests, Art Wong. Art,
hi,
answer the question.
We have about 3,000 acres of land. The Port Authority oversees about 7,600 acres of land and water, including these channels and harbors here.
Would you guys ever want the breakwater to come down? Or is that an unfair question?
The breakwater is controlled actually by the federal government. They built it over a 50-year period. It cost many millions and millions of dollars.
And wasn't it built to keep, for the military ships coming into port,
in part that, but also to protect the two port complexes, the Port of LA and Long Beach, and also to protect the waterfront properties of the many homeowners and others living along the waterfront.
So where are we headed now?
Well, it really depends on which way our captain's going to take us. Again, we are looking for vessels in the harbor today. Right turn here around Pier F will take us down to the Jacobson Pilot Station as well as USC launch. I believe we have a vessel working at Pier J South. It really is the captain's whim which direction we're headed right now, Harvey.
So we'll hang off for a minute and we'll wait till we find something interesting.
Great.
All right, here we are. We're coming into some activity here.
Yeah, this is our Pier J South channel. It's operated by Stevedoring Services of America. We have a French line ship in berth today. Again, this is one of those super ships that we referenced earlier, Harvey. It carries about 8,000 20-foot containers per voyage. Also, from this vantage point, you can see the length of those booms. The booms are the part of the gantry crane that come down when a ship arrives at berth, hence the expression lowering the boom. And again, from this vantage point, you can get its full length, which is 160 feet wide. Now, again, we talk about these vessels being post-Panamax vessels, again, that transit the Pacific or the Atlantic trade routes. They are too large to transit through the Panama Canal. The canal, remember, is over 100 years old. The locks are 1,000 feet in length. They're 110 feet wide. And again, these vessels are 1,100 feet long, 140 feet wide. And Panama did just approve bond issues measures to expand the canal, but again, that's probably a decade away.
Is Costco one of your largest leaseholders?
Well, actually, Costco does not lease land from the Port of Long Beach. They are a tenant of Stevedoring Services of America. And again, you have Costco boxes on this terminal along with Hanjin boxes, MSC, which is Mediterranean Shipping Company out of Europe, and another French carrier here, CMA CGM Lines. So we are truly exhibiting international trade at its best.
Now this ship is what, approximately a quarter of a mile long?
Yeah, just under 1,100 feet. And this is the CMA CGM Hugo.
It's unbelievable. I still can't fathom something that large being able to stay afloat.
And you know what else is remarkable, Harvey? Despite the size of these ships, they're in and out of here in about 3 to 4 days. They are making Long Beach their first U.S. West Coast port of call. These giants transit across the Pacific from South China, Hong Kong, Japan, wherever, carrying cargo intended for consumption in Southern California. We are also handling cargo distribution throughout the United States from right here in Long Beach Harbor.
Do you have any idea how long it takes for them to make a crossing?
Yeah, it's about 12 days, 2 weeks. They're fast vessels, they're efficient vessels. With the port's Green Port policy, which was initiated about 2 years ago by our Board of Harbor Commissioners, these vessels now are slowing down about 20 miles from shore. Slower moving ships emit fewer emissions. Thank you, Harvey. Yeah, and that helps us breathe easier in Long Beach and in Southern California.
And this would hold how many containers did you say?
8,020 footers. Now the bulk of the containers are 40 footers, so just divide that number in half. You can see the 20s on the bow on the front end of this ship, and the 40 footers are towards the center and the rear of this vessel.
And it takes about 3 days to unload all?
3 to 4 days, yeah, if the ship is working 2 or 3 shifts.
I'm assuming you have an eclectic mix of merchandise that come into the port?
Yeah, we handle just about everything that the consumer wants. Being post-holiday shopping season now, Harvey, you probably were involved in some of that pre-holiday shopping madness. I tell folks that, you know, the contents of a container ship are as varied as the contents of a shopping mall. Lots of electronics, a lot of consumables, clothing items, depending on the season, back to school clothing for our children. The list goes on and on.
Now the arms here, those are part of the crane. That's not part of the ship, is that correct?
Those arms are actually the gantry crane booms.
And that's what unloads the containers?
Actually, look closely at those booms and you'll see a glass enclosed cab. Right, they move back and forth across the boom. Inside that cab is a member of the International Longshore and Warehouse Union, and they are operating Nintendo-like joysticks to raise and lower these boxes that weigh 40 to 60 tons.
There's one moving now.
Right, he or she is going to be pulling off a box. On the other side of the ship, on the wharf side, there's another ILWU member. He or she is operating a cab with a bomb cart. The box is placed on board that bomb cart and then relocated in the container terminal. If it is going to be consumed locally, a truck will pick it up. If it's headed for points east of the Rocky Mountains, then the box will be transferred directly to our rail yard.
Now this little structure in the middle, that's the cruise compartment?
That's it.
Houses all of the mechanisms to operate the ship?
Exactly. From the wheelhouse on down to crew quarters, galley, recreational facilities. There are elevators on these ships to carry crew members from floor to floor.
Be darned. There goes a container right now.
Right, that one's being loaded onto the ship. Could be a U.S. export. And what we're exporting out of Long Beach and the U.S. these days is primarily raw materials, plastics, cotton, agriculture. American farmers, U.S. farmers, feed the world.
Now only one super tanker can be here at the dock at any one time?
At this facility, they have room for one super ship, yes. Our newest terminal which is operated by Total Terminals International, is almost, the wharf at that facility is almost a mile long, and they can accommodate 3 super ships at once.
How many cranes do you have in the port?
We have over 80 gantry cranes, with the majority of them being post-Panamax cranes, cranes capable of handling these larger container ships.
This just keeps going and going, doesn't it?
It seems that way, yeah, to the uninformed visitor, and that's why I'm glad we can show Long Beach Treasure's audience our seaport in Long Beach.
I don't think a lot of people realize how vast and how important the port is to the city.
We are an economic engine. Again, we generate 30,000 jobs in the city of Long Beach. That's 1 out of 8 jobs in the city of Long Beach tied to trade. Within Southern California, that job count grows to about 500,000.
Let me interrupt you just
Sure.
a second. What's hanging off the arm of the crane right there?
That's the mechanism that is used, the spreader bar, it's called a spreader bar, and that is what attaches to the containers.
Oh, and lifts it up.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a great view of that piece of equipment. When these cranes aren't being utilized to offload cargo, they're being used by members of the ILWU. Crane operators are a special breed of dock workers. You typically start out working the docks and then you move into crane operating, and it takes a few extra skills.
That's quite impressive, seeing the stern of the ship right there with all of the containers.
Exactly, and you can see that rack system that's utilized by some of these large vessels to hold the boxes in place. Further, you use these steel bars to lock the containers at the very back end of the vessel into place and hold them during a trans-Pacific crossing.
This is the end of the port here?
That's the end of this channel, so we'll make a U-turn here and then we'll head back out. There's a bunker barge adjacent to the vessel. Again, they don't want to waste any time in port, so they will be refueled, restocked, and on their way as quickly as possible.
It's really quite calm in here.
It is.
Always this calm?
This is a protected channel, yes, for unloading cargo, and the vessel needs to be secure against the wharf for safety and optimum loading and unloading capability here.
I just can't get over how large those cranes are.
Large cranes, large ships. Sometimes I feel like the luckiest person in the world, like I never have to grow up, because I remember playing with big boats and big cranes when I was a kid, and I still get to do it.
Now, compare the size of this ship to the Queen Mary.
Actually, they're pretty similar. The Queen Mary is 1,019 feet long, if memory holds, and these vessels are 1,100 feet long.
So the Queen Mary is a little longer.
A little shorter. 1,019 versus 1,100.
Gotcha.
Yeah, 81 feet,
Yeah.
if my math is correct, Harvey.
Don't ask me a math question.
Me either.
And those are all self-contained cargo containers.
Right, and again, the contents is as varied as the content of a shopping mall.
Do you have any, is there anything that cannot be shipped into the Port of Long Beach?
Well, hazardous materials, radioactive materials, unsafe cargoes, obviously.
So these ships have basically like what we have in some of the automobiles, that global positioning mechanism. They set the course and it goes on its own.
Exactly. Again, except for sailing into or out of a harbor, they are fully automated. There are times when vessels are transiting the seas that Mother Nature comes into play, and again, they need to be steadied and secured by that human touch.
That's going to be picking up a container.
Right, that's the spreader bar in operation. You can see the wings on each end of it. They latch into the box and hoist it up.
Now, is this ship being unloaded or loaded?
It is happening simultaneously. They're both loading and unloading concurrently. Again, they have 3 gantry cranes on it. They're primarily working the center of the ship right now.
There it goes right
And there
now.
it goes, right.
And where do they drop it?
There's a cab and a trailer on the other side of the ship, on the wharf side. If the cargo is going to be consumed locally, they'll reposition it in the yard for a truck to pick up. If it's going to communities, to consumers east of the Rocky Mountains, well then they'll transit it to our rail yard. And we have on-dock rail in operation at most of our container terminals. We have trains that come into and out of the port. And I'm a Long Beach resident, Harvey. I know you are too. Each train that comes into or out of the harbor eliminates 250 one-way truck trips.
You know, sometimes when I'm in bed and it is quiet, I hear a train whistle. Is that from the port?
There are about 50 trains a day that service the harbor these
I only
days.
hear it when it's only quiet.
I too hear it in the quiet of the night, and it's kind of interesting. It reminds me that we do live waterfront in Long Beach, that we have a lot of coastal beauty, but we have a working seaport in Long Beach as well.
I don't know, I think this is really, really impressive.
And we've only had a small taste of the harbor so far. It's kind of interesting. As we were heading down this channel, I saw a special cargo. Do you see it? Is there a fire truck sticking up out of one of those boxes? Or have they already moved it?
A new fire engine?
Yeah, at the very tip of this wharf. It's probably used fire equipment. We utilize these various types of ambulances, fire trucks, whatever, school buses even, and there's a market for used firefighting equipment worldwide.
You have a lot of birds and animal life here in the port?
There's a wealth of water life, sea creatures and birds in the harbor, yeah. Our waters are very clean in Long Beach Harbor, and it's just amazing. In fact, a little later we may see sea lions, and sea lions only frolic where they find an abundance of fish and clean waters.
Or the aquarium.
You're right.
So most of these are trucked away from the port?
Half of them are trucked away from the harbor. The other half, again, our cargo mix is about 50-50.
Is there a rail line close by here?
Yeah, it's on the other side of this terminal. Yeah, and again, these trains form. They're gondolas. The rail cars are called gondolas, and you can double stack one 40-foot box atop another. Again, each train into or out of the harbor takes, that's it. That's the fire truck that I believe is headed for export. Again, we may no longer see a need for that fire equipment, but there are plenty of places in the world that want used firefighting equipment.
So they purchase it from the city?
Well, I don't believe that's a City of Long Beach fire vehicle, but I'm sure it was a municipal vehicle someplace.
You have nothing to do with the oil islands, right?
Actually, that's an entirely different city department that operates the oil islands.
And I know there are two openings, one in the port of Los Angeles and one in the port of Long Beach, and they are called what?
Yeah, the openings to the federal breakwater in Long Beach, it's called Queens Gate. The opening at the port of Los Angeles, it's known as Angels Gate.
Is Queens Gate because of the Queen Mary?
Actually, I think the name predates the Queen Mary, I believe, and help me with the history here, Harvey. Long Beach was known as the Queen's City prior to the arrival of the Queen Mary.
Oh.
Urban legend, perhaps. It's something that I've heard, but I really can't document. But the name Queen's Gate for our breakwater opening predates the arrival of the Queen Mary in 1967.
Well, you know, we're going to have to leave for a little while, but because there's so much to see here in the port of Long Beach. We're going to do another show for the following show, and so I'm not going to say goodbye. I'm going to say I will see you very soon, and thanks so far for telling me all about your Port of Long Beach.
Hey, it's our Port of Long Beach, Harvey, and thank you for coming to see us.
All right, we'll see you again.
You got it.
Okay. And that's our show for this time. Be sure and come back, and we're going to continue our show on the Port of Long Beach. So thanks for watching.
The Greater Long Beach chapter of the American Red Cross.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Long Beach Treasures. I'm your host, Harvey Keller. We're going to continue our tour of the Port of Long Beach, and joining me once again is Stephen Macias. Stephen, I see Sea Launch over here. Tell me about it.
Sure, Harvey. This is a pretty remarkable Long Beach Seaport customer. It's U.S. Sea Launch, and it's a multinational corporation represented by Boeing of the United States, along with Kvarner, a Norwegian shipbuilder, and two rocket makers from the former Soviet Union, Yuzhnoye Yuzhmash out of the Ukraine, and Energia. They're out of Russia. All four entities have combined into Sea Launch, and what they're doing is the final assembly of communication satellites here in Long Beach Harbor. That takes place in that gray and white multi-story structure known as the Payload Processing Facility. They finish the rockets and the satellites, and they are loaded onto the Sea Launch Commander, the vessel you see in front of us there. It serves as mission control, if you will, for these waterborne launches. Sea Launch departs with a crew of about 250 from Long Beach Harbor. The Sea Launch Commander.
250 men?
Or women.
Or crew.
Crew, yeah, that works. And they head south of the Easter Islands to perform these waterborne launches. In fact, before you arrived today, the Odyssey, the 20-story launch platform Odyssey departed from the harbor. And they will be performing another waterborne launch very soon.
Tell me, are we anywhere close to what used to be or may still be called the Mole?
In fact, Harvey, Sea Launch does reside on the former Navy Mole in Long Beach Harbor. Yeah, this is all land that we've redeveloped since the closure in 1994 of the Long Beach Naval Station, followed by the closure of the shipyard in 1997.
So this was where the naval base used to be?
Exactly. In fact, again, we still call this the Navy Mole. The land area on the right side of us is the old naval station and shipyard facility. Again, following closure of those facilities by the federal government, there was much public debate, and Long Beach was ultimately named the Reuse Authority. This is former port land that was turned over to the Navy for a naval station in Long Beach. After their departure, the land was returned to the port.
Where the cranes are over there, is that where the Roosevelt Naval Base?
Yeah, the cranes do mark the former naval station and shipyard facility in Long Beach.
So we're in the old
naval basin. And again, thanks to a peacetime economy, we've readapted these former naval lands. The leaseholder is Total Terminals International. Primary customer at our Pier T facility is Hanjin Shipping. They're out of South Korea.
Captain, while you're out here, tell me what you do with this. Stephen was saying that you surveyed when the Queen Mary II came in to see if depth was...
Yes, that's correct. About a month prior to the Queen Mary 2's arrival, we got a call from the port pilots indicating that they would like to get the Queen Mary 2 as close to the Queen Mary 1 as they possibly could to have a ceremony and a salute, a whistle salute. So we went out and we performed a hydrographic survey of the bottom, which we basically determine the depths, and then we create what's called bathymetric maps, and we provide those maps to the ship captains. We provide that information to NOAA as well, but we gave that information to our port pilots, and then they were able then to determine, based on the draft of the Queen Mary 2, bring the ship in as close as they could possibly get her, and then they were able to have their ceremony.
What other kinds of surveying do you do?
Well, our primary function is condition and dredge payment surveys, which dredge payment contract compliance would mean that when we hire a contractor to do dredging, we will do a pre-dredge and then a post-dredge, and we calculate volume of dredge material, and the contractor gets paid based on that figure.
We haven't talked about it yet, but do you do something with checking on the subsidence also?
Actually, our port surveyors do, and that's what we are. We're surveyors, land surveyors by profession, and for me, part of my function is state law mandates that hydrographic surveying be done by a licensed land surveyor. But some of our landside surveyors do the subsidence surveys and have done them for years. And so back in I believe the 40s, on Terminal Island, which we call what we would call our subsidence bowl. That's where the greatest portion of subsidence happened. My understanding is it subsided about 30 feet there. And it wasn't so much that the land just collapsed straight down. It was more like a drain, like your kitchen sink. If you were to pull your kitchen sink drain, all of the land kind of moved horizontally as well as vertically and subsided. So it was gradually less subsidence the further away we got from the subsidence bowl.
So they keep you busy?
Yes, they keep us extremely busy.
And you work for the port itself?
Yes, I am a port employee.
Thanks, Captain.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Stephen. Don't go away. Now, do we still have a subsidence problem here in Long Beach?
Actually, as Pete mentioned, our port engineers do continue to monitor the subsidence issue. There's very, very little. Oil was discovered in Long Beach Harbor in the 1930s, and that oil was extracted at great rates. In fact, you still see elements of oil extraction throughout the harbor today. By about the 50s, the subsidence problem had become very, very dramatic in the North Harbor area. As Pete mentioned, it was then that scientists determined if you were going to continue to extract oil, you had to inject these wells with salt water. And again, thanks to improved technologies, we're able to monitor that subsidence, but it still poses a bit of a challenge for us
Well,
today.
I have it in my line of sight. That's the Gerald Desmond Bridge. Am
That's
I correct?
right.
Now, is that going to be replaced?
My fingers are crossed. We are looking to replace that bridge, right. It was completed in 1968. It was never intended to handle the volume of cargo. Approximately 15% of this nation's waterborne trade touches that bridge. So we see a critical need.
Do you need to raise the bridge?
The bridge needs to be raised. It needs to be widened, yes. Both are important factors there.
And the basin over here is?
Again, this is our PRT facility directly in front of us. You're also looking at Long Beach Container Terminal, the facility with the red and white striped gantry cranes.
Oh, these are gantry cranes just like the white ones, except they're red?
Exactly. Hanjin's color is Hanjin blue, but they also like red cranes. Again, we're a landlord port, and we build to suit the customer's needs. That PRT facility is home to 14 gantry cranes. They were purchased in the early, I want to say in the early 21st century. We went out to bid. Again, ZPMC was awarded that bid. We bought 20 cranes, and when you buy them in bulk that way, you get a discount price of about $7 million a crane.
I was going to ask you, do you have any idea what a crane would cost? $7 million.
When you buy them 20 at a time, Harvey.
Wow. It's a few bucks you have invested there.
Quite a few bucks.
Right.
In fact, that's a state mandate. All seaports in the state of California operate in trust for the state of California. The state mandates that we only divert funds to 4 areas: commerce, navigation, marine recreation, and hatcheries. So building these cargo facilities for our customers promotes commerce in the state of California, and thus an allowable use of port funds.
You know, there's talk of building an LNG terminal. If they did, where would it be located?
That facility would be sited here at Pier T.
Right in here?
Which is right in this area, right. But again, there has been no determination made on that facility.
But if it would be built, it would be in this area.
Correct.
That's awfully close to downtown. Well, we won't go there.
Thanks, Harvey.
I don't want to put you on the spot there, Stephen. Is this the biggest part of the port, Pier T?
Pier T is our single largest container facility, right. At full build-out, it'll be just under 400 acres.
How many lessees do you have?
We have 7 container terminals at present. And thus far, the focus of our tour has been on container facilities. But as you see with the Sea Launch facility, Harvey, we're a multi-service seaport. We handle a variety of cargoes. We have petroleum, we have cement, we have lumber, automobiles. Just about everything under the sun is handled at the seaport in Long Beach.
Now, when we talked earlier last time about you're owned by the city of Long Beach but operate independently. Does any of the revenue that you generate here at the port go to the city?
Yes, our city charter in Long Beach allows for the council to request a 10% transfer. This year, we transferred over $14 million to the city's Tidelands Fund. Again, the state mandates that port monies only be utilized in the city's Tidelands area, so the city can use that money to enhance its waterfront.
But not in the general fund usage?
No, that's a state provision that it only be used in the Tidelands
So
area.
they could use it for lifeguard services?
Beach sand replenishment, a lot of uses for the waterfront, but those funds are designated Tidelands funds specifically.
That must come in handy once a year to get a nice check like that.
I would think so. We also reimburse the city for city-provided services. Our paychecks come from City Hall, and we reimburse the city for payroll, fire and police protection, as well as legal services.
You don't have your own fire department and police department?
No, we utilize the fine men and women from Long Beach Fire as well as Long Beach Police to augment our own harbor patrol officers.
What's behind the seawall here?
That is a facility that's used primarily for lumber these days.
Storage?
Right. We have 2 lumber facilities, 2 lumber terminals. Lumber comes primarily from the Pacific Northwest, and it's used in the Southlands construction industry.
What, the orange structures over there, are those cranes again?
Yeah, more gantry cranes, again, in the colors that customer, it's their brand, if you will. Long Beach Container Terminal, LBCT, is home to Orient Overseas Container Line, OOCL. We have an awful lot of acronyms here, Harvey, but they're a carrier out of Hong Kong. They first started calling Long Beach in 1969.
Is there anywhere you can look in the port of Long Beach and not see a gantry crane?
Yeah, there are a lot of places you can look in our harbor. There are no gantry cranes at the lumber facilities, no gantry cranes at our petroleum facilities, nor at our cement facilities. Bulk cargoes don't require gantry cranes. Gantries are used primarily for containerized cargo.
Who is your largest lessee?
That would be Total Terminals International, the terminal we just passed, at just under 400 acres.
And they're out of where?
TTI is U.S. labor. It is a consortium. Again, Total Terminals International is Metropolitan. MTC, again, more of those acronyms, Harvey, representing waterfront labor, along with Hanjin Shipping out of South Korea.
You get a lot of imports from Taiwan, too, do you not?
Yeah. Again, Asia accounts for 90% of this port's trade.
I'm going to assume, since we're a West Coast port, that most of the Asian market comes into Los Angeles and Long Beach.
Yeah, that's very, very true. Although there are some carriers that recognize the need for two points of entry into the U.S. markets. So there are carriers who leave Asia, utilize the Suez Canal to hit the U.S. East Coast. But this is a much quicker all-water route, making the Pacific the ocean of choice.
Is the Asian market still increasing in size?
It's amazing. We have a weakened dollar against Asian currencies right now, and in our last calendar year we saw another surge in imports from Asia.
They just keep coming.
They just keep coming because we keep asking for it.
Well, now, is this a container ship?
Actually, no, that's our BP facility. This is a petroleum terminal.
Oh, there's the lumber.
There's the lumber, that's right. That's the way it comes into us from the Pacific Northwest. But the interesting thing about our BP facility is that this will be our first facility to utilize shoreside power. Right now, these ships have to run their engines while they're discharging cargo. Within the next year or so, this vessel will be able to plug into shoreside power, turning off its engines, reducing its emissions, and doing a lot for the environment.
Did you say this was an oil vessel?
It's an oil tanker, right.
Okay. Are they loading oil from the Long Beach area here?
Actually, it's carrying crude primarily from the North Slope in Alaska. It's a 6-day coastwise voyage from Alaska to Long Beach. Oil, the crude, then travels via pipeline to nearby Carson, where it's refined and delivered to us in about 2 or 3 days. This vessel is fairly empty. It's sitting so high in the water. When the vessel arrives, all you would see of it is the black part upward. The red part of the ship would be underwater, if you will, again indicating that it's full of product.
That's a good size ship also.
It's about 1,000 feet in length, yeah. These are truly remarkable tankers.
Looks like a little scuba boat.
Actually, that's a lifeboat, and different than lifeboats that we may remember from luxury vessels of the 30s and 40s. Not that you and I would remember those, Harvey. But, of course, they want crews to be maintained in safety, so they are covered by vessels. Over on the right, this is a cement facility. This one's operated by CEMEX. That's Cementos Mexicanos. Mexico is just one of the places in the world that cement comes from. And again, we use cement throughout Southern California for the local construction industry. Not a glamorous product, but again, a major U.S. export. Over on the left-hand side, you're looking at old Oldsmobiles in your old dishwasher, Harvey.
Junk.
It's junk, it's scrap metal, but we're a nation of recyclers. It comes to the harbor, it's sorted, it heads primarily to Asia, Korea specifically. They reprocess it and then send it back to us in the form of new consumer goods.
Toyotas.
Toyotas and refrigerators and dishwashers and microwave ovens, yeah. But again, the importance is that nothing is thrown away these days. We recycle, even scrap metal.
The crane there, it looked like that would be a magnet on the bottom.
It's a scoop. It's a great big scoop, if you will, yeah. And, oh, you're right, they are... Harvey, you got me, because that is a new crane there. Yeah, there's a smaller crane in operation that's the old scoop. You see that?
See that between.
Yeah, exactly.
Boy, that's a lot of scrap metal.
It's a lot of scrap metal, but again, there's a lot of construction going on in Southern California. And if you tear down a building, with any luck, those girders end up on our docks and then off across the Pacific again.
What's at Pier D here?
Pier D is really a mixed-use facility. It has row-row capabilities, roll-on, roll-off. We have liquid cargoes such as vegetable tallow, along with the cement, steel products, and containers.
Looks vacant.
Well, that's an old transit shed, Harvey, and transit sheds are really a thing of the past. In the 1940s, Long Beach Harbor earned the distinction of being America's most modern port because we had transit sheds and warehouses for a lot of these commodities. With the advent of containerization, however, you no longer need the warehouses.
Now, I believe we're coming up to under the Gerald Desmond Bridge.
We are approaching the Desmond Bridge, right.
And the Vincent Thomas is much higher than this one.
The Vincent Thomas is much higher. I believe it's 20 feet taller, and I'd have to check those figures for you. But, and its span is much greater. So the rise is gentler, and their channel is wider at that point. So LA, the Port of Los Angeles, and the city of San Pedro don't face the same challenges we have here.
Do all of these ships, when they come in, need a tugboat?
A lot of them do, yeah. In fact,
It's not
tugboats.
required?
Well, some of these larger ships are self-propelled, but tugboats really have an important function in the harbor. Not only do they push and nudge ships into their wharves, but they also help slow them down. So yeah, you will see tugs attached to most vessels transiting in or out of Long Beach.
You really get a view of the scrap metal lid.
That's
don't
right,
ya?
that's right. That's some scrap heap. And again, lumber. Lumber was the first cargo into Long Beach back in 1911. A lumber schooner, the SS Iaqua, made its first call in June of 1911.
I believe Adelaide Tishner's husband made his fortune in lumber.
And I would defer to you on that one.
I may be wrong, but that's what I had heard somewhere along the line.
Who was Gerald Desmond?
Well, I don't know. There was a Desmond department store.
Gerald Desmond was a former city prosecutor.
Oh.
And
wasn't there a Desmond's department store?
yes, there was a Desmond's, but I don't know if there was a connection there. The bridge was named after the former city prosecutor.
So if it's rebuilt, would it still keep the same name?
I'm not sure, Harvey. We might want to call it
Or
the Harvey Keller Bridge.
Right, that'll be the day.
And as Pete was mentioning earlier, there you can see remnants of, oh, there's a sea lion frolicking. I told you we'd see one sooner or later.
It probably got loose from the aquarium.
Well, no, Harvey, we have our own band of sea lions here. But there is the old Edison steam generating plant, and again, a very visible reminder of subsidence
Yeah, that's one
in
of
the
the
old
major
harbor.
places of subsidence.
Yeah, as Pete mentioned, 25 to 30 feet in this North Harbor area.
I had heard, I don't know if it's true, that in the old Buffin's department store, they could no longer use the elevators because of the subsidence. The elevator doors wouldn't close.
In downtown Long Beach.
Uh-huh.
I'd never heard
By
that.
the way, what are the nets under the bridge? Is that in case somebody jumps or something?
Actually, those nets are there to hold chunks of concrete from falling.
The bridge is falling apart?
Well, it's structurally sound, but again, the nets are there because concrete chunks also fall. And as we saw earlier, Matson Shipping, again, one of the last remaining U.S. flagged carriers.
Do they still have liners, luxury liners?
No, actually, they no longer operate passenger ships. It's strictly cargo. Longtime Long Beach residents may recall the old Procter & Gamble plant. In 1990s, the Port of Long Beach redeveloped the old Procter & Gamble plant, turned it into this 60-acre container facility.
Are there any cruise lines that go from the West Coast to Hawaii?
There are, and I believe they all depart out of the Port of Los Angeles. The only cruise carrier we have out of Long Beach is Carnival Cruises, and they depart from the terminal adjacent to the Queen Mary.
By the dome, the...
Right, the former Spruce Goose Dome. It's been retrofit to now handle passenger cargo.
Boy, everywhere you look, just stacks and stacks and stacks of containers.
Yeah, multicolored boxes, cargo containers, and again, a world of opportunities for consumers of the United States. This Inner Harbor area, again, historically was the site of the old Ford plant. Remember, Henry Ford came to Long Beach in 1929, manufactured automobiles here for about 30 years.
You know, this has really been interesting, and I know at times you do public tours.
Yeah, we do.
We'd like to. Coming up that you might want?
Harvey, we have a great season of cruises for the Long Beach community. We run these cruises May through October, the first and third Saturday of every month, as well as the second Tuesday. With a few exceptions, we won't operate the Saturday departures during holiday weekends this summer.
Reservations required?
Reservations are required. We're going to direct your viewers to the Port of Long Beach website at polb.com. Beginning in April, we'll run notices on our community cruise program, and thanks for mentioning that.
Stephen, we're almost out of time. I again want to thank you for being my tour guide today, because this has really been a most interesting visit, and I'm just amazed at what you see down here in the port and how busy it is. There's just not a dull moment. Everything is moving.
Well, Harvey, it's been a long time in planning this special harbor cruise for Long Beach Treasures, and we're glad that you joined us today. The weather cooperated. Everything's been perfect today. Thanks again for asking to visit the port.
Once again, Stephen, thank you.
Thank you, Harvey. This
has been a pleasure.
Thank you.
And that's our show for this time. Be sure and join us again next time as we take another walk through history and uncover more Long Beach treasures. Hello, and welcome to another edition of Long Beach Treasures. I'm your host, Harvey Keller. Today we are indeed visiting a Long Beach treasure, the historic Rancho Los Alamitos. And joining me is the executive director of the foundation, Pamela Seeger. Pamela, thanks for taking some time out of your busy schedule to take me on a tour.
It's a pleasure.
Before we go in, tell me about the big tree.
Well, we have a pair of these. They're actually landmark trees. They're Moreton Bay fig trees planted in the late 19th century. They're actually native to Moreton Bay in Australia, and it's a member of the ficus family.
Boy, they're big, aren't they?
They are, but they're really, they should have a lifespan of around 300 years, so they've got a ways to go yet.
A plumber's delight.
Actually, they've been quite good to this site. They have not, while they've raised the pavement, they've done no damage to the house.
Great. Now, this was part of an original land grant?
Yes, it was. It was a very important Native American site from 500 AD until 1790, when 300,000 acres of that land was given to Manuel Nieto.
And it started out as a little four-room adobe house?
The adobe house was built around 1800, and it started out as an outpost, like you would have for cowboys riding the range, looking after the herd. Remember, in Southern California at that time, in the around 1800, no trees, but people settled here, the Native Americans and others, because there was water. But there were no trees and open landscape, so what did you do if you had to ride out? You corralled your horses in the back here in a rudimentary structure, adobe. You used the rooms in the front, and you cooked outside.
You know, I've noticed as I was walking around a lot of pepper trees. Why did they select so many pepper trees?
They're very good in, well, they were selected later in the Victorian period, but they're very, very good in an arid environment, although people call them California peppers, and they're native to Peru.
Can we go in?
Most certainly.
Now, as we go in, I notice that this is the thickness of the adobe walls?
Yes. The adobe walls, it's a style of building that came from Spain. You make an adobe brick out of mud and water and some straw, and it's an unreinforced form of unreinforced masonry, a style brought from Europe, but perfect in our Mediterranean climate. And of course, we had the adobe soil right here, so you were building with what you had.
So the thickness keeps it cool in the summer and warm
And if you heat it inside, warm in the winter. It's a very environmental friendly type of building.
This is a beautiful place.
It is. It's very much enjoyed, and it's the second oldest dwelling in Southern California.
And this is where the owners would greet their guests?
Yes, this is the front door, right here. There's a chain of ownership for the house. First of all, Manuel Nieto, and then Governor Figueroa owned the adobe also. Abel Stearns, who was one of the signers of the California Constitution, and then the Bixby family. And the Bixby family lived here for over 90 years.
And Fred and Florence were the last
They were the last
to reside
occupants,
here.
and they, realizing the importance of the site, historically and physically, donated the site in 1968 to the city of Long Beach.
I noticed a lot of Southwest influence. Why is that?
That's because Fred and Florence had ranches in Arizona, and they traveled back and forth a lot, and they brought things back from trading posts and other places in those areas.
Can we just wander through and
Absolutely.
take a look?
Let's go into the billiard room first.
Okay. Now, how's billiard different from pool?
Well, billiards is a game that originated as a lawn game in colonial India, actually, and it doesn't have pockets, as you would see. It's a game where you're playing off of the 3 balls in the center and another rack of balls that you use. Here are the billiard cues, and it was considered initially in England rather a risque type of game, but then when Queen Victoria's consort decided he liked billiards, it became suddenly socially very acceptable.
Now, this table was purchased by John Bixby in the 1870s?
By John Bixby. He was going to donate it to the YMCA in Long Beach. They decided that it would lead young men into bad ways, so the table came right back, plonked down in this room, and it has not moved since. It's a beautiful Brunswick table. Actually, it's a Brunswick table. Very, very nice piece as an antique.
That's beautiful. This is John Bixby up here?
This is John Bixby. Yes, he came out, first of all, for the gold rush, settled, went to Northern California, and then joined his cousins over at Rancho Los Cerritos, and had his eye on this place. They leased it, first of all, and then purchased it in 1881. This is a painting of some interest by Harvey Grammatke, and this is the canyon where currently Dodger Stadium would be.
Oh,
so Chavez Ravine, yes. Very, very interesting piece.
And the glass collection?
Glass collection was collected by Mrs. Bixby. Everything has a small label on it, and we have notebooks from Mrs. Bixby saying who gave it to her, what the occasion was, and what the date was. So it's a very carefully catalogued collection, and surprisingly, her husband took an interest in that collection also. So we're very fortunate to have such a large collection of glass, both the pressed glass and some Lalique as well.
And whose pipe collection?
You know, I really don't know. It's a collection of pipes that were here, I'm assuming collected over 2 generations of the Bixby family. It must have been quite revered to have had a pipe cabinet built for it.
You know, there are several things I love about the rancho, but 2 of them. One, there are no ropes. In many historic sites, you have to follow a little roped path, and you can't really see some of the things up close.
We try very hard to present the whole site, and the house in particular, as a personal home, so that you are getting a sense of the character of the place as people lived in it. We don't use original rugs on the floor because those get a lot of traffic, but we select rugs that are similar to what was there. But in every other case, we find visitors here very respectful. They follow the docent guide very nicely, and we have not found the need for ropes and other kinds of constraints.
And the other thing I like is that in many historic homes, they have furniture of the period, but I understand that 95% of the furniture in this house belonged to members of the Bixby family over the years.
That's exactly correct. They were very, very good about leaving the house furnished as it was when they gave it to the city. And there are other items that have come back to us since. There's a piece that came back just in the last year, which is a beautiful French fern stand over here. And that has been in the family for several generations, and a family member decided it was time it should come back home.
And these two little chairs, don't they date to about the 1850s?
Yes, they do. They're very nice chairs. This one over here is a Hunsinger chair, famous furniture maker, and nice representations, clearly family pieces that were kept down the years.
You know, I think if any room in the house would perhaps give an indication of the wealth of the Bixby family, it would probably be this room, because although these are computer-generated reproductions, Monet's Water Lily hung on this wall,
yes,
and Mary Cassatt's Mother About to Wash a Sleepy Child right there.
Right, and those were both bequeathed by the, Mrs. Bixby to the Los Angeles County Museum of Art. So you can see the originals at LACMA today, and the painting on the right, the Mary Cassatt, is in fact their most visited painting in the museum today.
Wow!
Yeah, it came right off the wall in the ranch house here. The ranch house had in the last generation, Florence and Fred Bixby, a very fine small art collection. There is a Rodin piece that used to sit here that's still in the family. And here you've got Utrillo, a well-known French painter, Grausala, Vuillard, another good painter, Gardner Simons, and Frederick Fusaki over the mantle there. And that's it's called the Fancy Dress. The Bixby family went to France in 1926, and Mrs. Bixby had seen Frieske's work at the Panama Pacific Exposition in San Francisco and decided that when she went to France, she would visit his studio. She went alone. This painting was not yet finished. It's of his daughter. She said, when you finished it, pack it and send it. When it arrived here, Mr. Bixby apparently declared it was too Frenchy, too fancy, and didn't belong on a ranch, but Mrs. Bixby hung it above the mantel anyway.
And it's been there since?
Yes, it was there for many years.
You know, there are several things in the house that I would love to take home with me, but there are two things that I especially love. One of them is this little ship captain's desk.
Captain's writing desk, yes.
I think that is so fantastic.
It's beautiful, and it's also so practical. It's a writing desk. It's got little drawers in it, so it's beautifully comfortable. It's perfect height. So
and the doors open to the side rather than
exactly,
to the front.
Exactly. Yes, it is a very fine small piece.
And the Bixbys were married in what, 1898?
1898, yes.
This is their 50th wedding
This is their
anniversary
50th
picture?
wedding anniversary picture, right here. And if you could see onto the music patio, you would see that we still have this pot on the music patio in exactly the same position as is in the photograph. And the Bixbys celebrated with their 50th wedding anniversary with a wonderful party on the front lawn, of which we have family films. And the ranch workers presented the family with this plaque over here, commemorating their appreciation for the family on their 50th wedding anniversary.
I love the pocket doors here.
They still work beautifully.
Now, this glass is original?
It's original, and you can tell that from the wavy character of the glass. It's not as smooth as contemporary glass, although for restoration purposes, this wavy glass is beginning to be made again.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Now, this room is an addition, right?
It came about in two sections, first here for the first bay, and then the second bay. So you're walking out of the adobe into the additions onto the house.
So as we walk back into the library
we're returning
now,
to the adobe.
Okay.
This is a very comfortable room. It's a room in which we often ask children, you know, what do you do when you're not watching television or using your computer? Do you read? It's a good question to ask.
I bet every one of these books have been read many times over by the Bixby families, haven't they?
The wear and tear on them would tell me yes. Yes, most definitely. And when asking the grandchildren about the library, that some of the dominant memories are the smell of roses and cigars. So,
Fred liked his cigars, didn't he?
yeah, there are several ashtrays around and a cigar box right there.
This is a beautiful library table.
Yes, it's actually a conversion from a square piano. And beautifully done, wonderful size and massing. It's a remarkable piece.
This is just a tremendous house, and if people haven't been up there, they need to get up here to see it.
Yep, I think one of the most appealing things is that the house is very comfortable. Everybody who comes says, well, actually, I would quite like to live here. So it's not overimposing. It's just an extremely comfortable space. Let's walk into the master bedroom.
Okay.
I think this room, for me, kind of indicates that although there was great wealth in the family, it was not ostentatious. They lived in a very straightforward way that I think makes the house so comfortable. This is a sleigh bed that was a present to Fred and Florence Bixby from Fred's mother when they got married.
This looks like it must have been especially made because
I suspect it is, given the size.
in that day and age, I don't think you'd have a California king-size bed.
No, I think not. I think it probably as a wedding present would have been a very special gift.
Now, I know John was a very successful sheep rancher.
This would have been Fred Bixby's father, yes.
But he was also a master craftsman because he built this armoire in the 1870s.
He did, yes, and sat there ever since. It's nicely carved, and it's a very sturdy piece of furniture.
Now, he had to build that in this room because you couldn't get that through the door.
I think you're probably right, Harvey, yes. I'm sure it was put together here. So maybe fabricated in pieces and then assembled.
That could be. How many bedrooms are there now?
Let me see. There's 2 in this wing, and 2 in the south wing. That's 4, and 2 upstairs, 6.
Now, this is an addition also.
This is an addition. You're coming out of the adobe, and it's kind of a sleeping area. Mrs. Bixby was not a great one for sleeping a lot, so she formed this small area, put a daybed here, and her writing desk, and would write here when she couldn't sleep, and there used to be a curtain across here so that she would not disturb her husband.
This is the second piece in the house that I am truly fascinated with. The Dancers?
The Dancers by Harriet Friesmuth. Harriet Friesmuth was a very well-known, very fine sculptress of the early 20th century. This is a piece using her 2 favorite models, Paul and Dacia. And it's interesting to note that at the time when this was done, it was inappropriate to have models who were nude together, male and female. So this was done, she posed these models holding onto a doorknob, and then individually, and then cast the piece as one.
Did they let her get married, I understand?
I'm not sure that Harriet Friesmuth ever did get married.
No, I mean the 2
Paul and
models.
Dacia. I think they did.
You know, Fred said, don't let the truth get in the way of a good story, so it may be a good story.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'd have to do a little research, Harvey, before I promote a story.
Okay.
So we'll go, would you like to go to the dining room?
Oh, sure.
This is a fine, small piece by a woman called Elsie Sofa. She's from England, and a very fine drawing and artist. Very sweet little piece.
You know, you keep changing things up here because this is different. There used to be a picture of Florence and...
Right. That's because the sofa piece came up at auction in England recently, and there were a number of editions because it's an etching, and we decided to buy it back in so that we could replace the one that we knew was there originally.
It keeps me on my toes when I'm a docent up here because every time I come up there's something new,
right.
and it makes it interesting.
It does indeed, and as we do more research, more and more things come back into the house that were originally here.
Now, I assume before doors they use serapes for...
Yes, most definitely, to go cover arches and openings. So we're going to the back hallway, which is obviously at the back of the house. We're walking out of the adobe again and into the back hallway. And here I always find it so interesting that this was the outside of the structure. Here's a triple hung window. When the second story was put on in 1926, the staircase was simply built over the top of the windows because they didn't want to lose the light into the main room. The second story really put on for the purposes of having more space for grandchildren when they visited. The dining room.
Now, it's my understanding that because of the billiard table, every room had to be moved back one.
Things were moved back.
This used to be the kitchen.
It did, and in fact, ever practical, we still have just a tin plate put over where the stove used to be, the flue for the stove. But it's a very pretty room. Everything, almost all the china is original, family china, which we're very fortunate to have. And it's a wonderful room to ask, to explore with people our relationship with food and how it's changed over time. Today, we don't seem to have a concept of seasonal food very much anymore, and nor how food gets to our table. We can jump out of our cars in a gas station, pick up a meal, and be on the way again.
It also gives you a sense of family because the family sat down here 3 times a day,
That's
7
correct.
days a week, and ate their meals together.
That's correct, and so few of us do that today.
And the 2 hutches here also were built in the 1870s by John Bixby?
That's correct, and they did quite well in the 1933 earthquake. This one had to have its glass replaced. This one still has its wavy glass of the period. But luckily, damage from the 33 earthquake here was relatively minor, which says a lot for a very solid adobe structure.
And we keep going, we'll be in the kitchen.
Exactly. Thank you.
Oh, I see a little kitten in here.
What are you doing in here? Come on, Missy, out you go.
Now, is this a kind of stove you cook on at home?
I doubt it. It's a wood-burning stove. I'd need a grove, a eucalyptus grove like the Bixbys had, in order to be able to cook on that stove. But this, they cooked on the wood stove for many years, before, even though the electric stove was in place.
That was because Mrs. Schenkel liked the old cook stove?
That's exactly so.
And she cooked, what, 6 meals?
6 meals a day. Well, 3 meals for the ranch hands, and then 3 meals for the family.
Plus baking and
Plus baking.
When
and
did she ever sleep?
I don't know, but she must have liked it. She was here for a long time.
Wow. The skylight sure adds a lot of light in here, doesn't it?
It's not only lighting, it vents. It's quite hot to cook in here, but the skylight has windows that open and venting on the side, which really works very well.
Could we take a quick run out to the barns area?
Yes.
This is quite a nice little courtyard.
Yeah, designed by Paul Howard in the 1920s. And what the idea here was that it used to be quite muddy and be a kind of dry area. And Mrs. Bixby, there was a large barn. Where that tree is, you would have seen a large barn. And so Mrs. Bixby wanted some kind of division between the gardens and barns area. So she had this walled garden created by Paul Howard. But you'll notice all of the plant material here throughout the gardens is very straightforward. None of it's fancy. There's not a lot of fancy pansies and things of that nature. It is, after all, as Mrs. Bixby pointed out, a ranch garden. It's attached to a ranch.
So this was a division between the family life and ranch life?
Yes, exactly, exactly. And really the driveway there makes that division.
Let's sneak over here to the secret garden. I know that many of the gardens here at the Rancho are really quite spectacular, but as you said, they're not pretentious.
No,
they're down to earth.
Not at all. And as you can see, we use this garden for entertaining quite a bit. The garden was designed by the Olmsted firm, as are most of the gardens at Rancho Los Alamitos. And the Olmsted firm is probably America's most prestigious landscape architecture firm. The first Frederick Law Olmsted, who founded the firm, did Central Park in New York and the Boston Necklace, Vanderbilt Mansions, and a number of very, very large and important pieces of landscape architecture in the United States. His sons continued that firm, and they worked here on the gardens from the late 1920s to the late 1930s. So this is a small Olmsted-designed garden.
Were they a West Coast?
No. They were from the East Coast, although they did establish an office in Palos Verdes. So we have the original plans for this garden and photos from a whole chronology of the gardens, but primarily 1928 when they had just finished them. And we restored the entire garden to the Olmsted plans using the plans and the historic photographs.
What a neat little place just to have coffee in the morning or tea in the afternoon,
Yeah.
or just sit and relax.
Exactly. It's a wonderful small garden that's heavily used by us for meeting and talking. It's a very relaxed. It's indicative of Southern California with your indoor or outdoor lifestyle.
And Florence was very much into the indoor-outdoor lifestyle,
Yes,
wasn't she?
yes. If you noticed, every room in the ranch house has a view out to the gardens beyond. And that's because of our Mediterranean climate. We can be indoors and outdoors for most of the year.
How many staff did they have to take care of all the gardens?
They had no formal gardener. Mrs. Bixby used the ranch hands who were working for Fred Bixby in the Barnes area, and there were a couple in particular that she worked with in the gardens, but no formal garden staff.
Let's run out to the barns real quick. Now we're going out to the barns area, and I see some beautiful animals over here.
We do keep livestock as part of our educational program. A barnyard area without livestock is a little bit difficult to understand. So we keep the heavy horses, as the Bixby family did, and we have some smaller horses with us also.
Now, Fred used to raise the English Shires.
He raised the Shires, Champion Shires, but for the work he used Belgians, and the Penny here is a Belgian. They can pull almost a ton from a standing start, and those were the horses with which things were plowed and delivered, and they work very hard. They're very steady temperaments.
This little white one is a pony. It looks like it still has its winter coat.
Yes, she does. This is Sandy.
And she's how old?
She's 30.
Wow. And Penny is?
23. Penny's retired. She had a little arthritis, so she's no longer working. Sandy is still quite capable of giving pony rides and loves to do that.
I notice you've got some bribes in your hand.
I do. Let me call them over. Come on. I know. I know.
They know your call, don't they?
They do indeed. Very careful never to feed them from our hands, which otherwise they look at everybody's hands for food. So we only ever put food on the ground. We don't ever feed it from our hands. But these animals have all been trained very well to be very tolerant of the public, and they're all very even temperament.
I see a little one over here.
This is Mr. Bud.
Hi, Penny.
This is Bud.
Hi, Bud.
It's a miniature horse, so he's fully grown and quite young, and unusually blue eyes.
Well, he does really have blue eyes.
He has blue eyes, very unusual. And a very nice temperament.
Where's little Bo Peep?
Yeah, here are some of our sheep and goats.
Hi, kiddo.
Love people, they're very social. And we're just about to we're waiting to start for the weather to warm a little bit, and then we will shear the sheep.
Here's my buddy over here.
This is your buddy Beethoven.
This is my buddy.
Hi, Beethoven, I didn't bring you in. He's looking for an apple. Now he's upset he doesn't have an apple. Aren't you? You're a good boy. You're a good boy. Okay,
now, you're open, what, Wednesdays
through Sunday from 1 until 5. We're free of charge, one of the few facilities that is still free of charge in our area. And in addition to being open for tours, people can also come and spend as much time as they want in the gardens, but it's a guided tour for the ranch house and barnyard area. We do school tours in the morning and Native American cultural workshops on Tuesday morning.
Speaking of school tours, the bus just pulled up.
It's pulled up rather more further up the drive than normally occurs, but I think it will be fine.
By the way, while we're talking, I will tell the audience that I also am a docent up here on the 3rd, 4th, and 5th Wednesday of the month, if there's one. So come on up, and I can take you on a tour of the barns and house.
And Harvey gives a wonderful tour, so I think it's something that you should take advantage of.
It's just fun. Could we run over here real quick? I see some more horses.
Right.
Because I want to point out that...
This is the feed shed that we're walking into here. And here, you might be interested to know that this is just about a third, only a third of the original feed shed was maintained. So you can imagine how long a building this was. Because essentially this ranch was a finishing ranch for cattle. The cattle were raised elsewhere, brought here, put in the feed shed and the adjacent corrals, fattened up for market, and then taken to market.
Now, are the two white horses Percherons?
They are a cross. They're a cross.
A cross. Hi, guys.
This is Lena and Holly.
This is Lena. Hi, Lena. Hi, Holly.
Lena and Holly, and they still work. They do some parades and other events. So they're still very much in their prime.
And I want to go down here on...
To see Louis?
You bet, because isn't Louis Penny's father?
Yes. Hi, Louis.
And Louis must be about 25 if Penny's 23.
That's right. That's right. A very, very steady, very, very sweet temperament horse.
Beethoven's talking to us.
Well, he's jealous of the attention that you're giving Louis. Hi, Lulu.
Pam, we're almost out of time. I want to thank you for taking the time out to take us on a tour, because if people haven't been up here, they need to come, because this is truly a Long Beach treasure.
It is indeed, and I thank you for profiling it today.
And that's our show for this time, so come back and join us again next time as we take another walk through history and uncover more Long Beach treasure.
Founded it